What if the rumor of who you truly love destroyed your entire career? Gavin Thompson stared at the crisp, white envelope in his trembling hands, the bold black letters spelling termination hitting him like a freight train. The Chicago morning light streamed through the glass walls of his corner office on the 32nd floor, but it felt cold now, sterile, like the life he had spent 12 years building was suddenly evaporating. At 32, he had climbed from junior analyst to vice president of client strategy at Apex Dynamics, the marketing powerhouse that handled campaigns for half the Fortune 500. Clients trusted him, colleagues respected him, and the corner office with its panoramic view of the lake was proof he had made it. Until yesterday. Until the rumor. The HR director had delivered the news with the same detached politeness she used for quarterly reviews. We've received credible reports of conduct that compromises our professional image, Gavin. Conservative clients are pulling back. We can't risk it. No details, no proof, just the whisper that had spread through the open plan floor like wildfire. Gavin and Caleb from design were more than colleagues. More than friends. The kind of more that didn't fit the polished, straight-laced brand Apex sold to Midwestern corporations. He hadn't denied it. How could he? Caleb Rivera had been his quiet anchor for 2 years, the graphic designer with the easy laugh and the way he could turn a boring deck into art that actually moved people. They had met at the company holiday party, shared a cab home, and never looked back. Late-night strategy sessions turned into stolen weekends in Caleb's Wicker Park loft, where the world outside their door didn't exist. Gavin had always been careful, never holding hands in the elevator, never lingering too long at Caleb's desk. But one late evening, a junior account exec had seen them leave the office together, laughing too freely, shoulders brushing in a way that screamed intimacy to anyone paying attention. By Monday, the rumor mill had done its work. Now Gavin sat alone, the severance papers unsigned on his desk. His phone buzzed. Caleb. He let it ring. What was there to say? I'm sorry I ruined us. I should have been more careful. The knot in his chest tightened. His conservative parents back in Indiana still sent him Christmas cards addressed to our successful son, never asking why he never brought anyone home. His older brother, a pastor in the suburbs, had once joked that real men didn't do that gay stuff. Gavin had laughed it off then. He wasn't laughing now. Down on the 16th floor, Caleb paced the design studio, headphones blasting to drown out the stairs. He had heard the whispers too. Poor Gavin. Bet he's the one who dragged Caleb into it. As if Caleb hadn't been the one to kiss Gavin first, to say, I don't want to hide forever. Caleb's own family in Texas had cut him off years ago when he came out at 21. He had built a new family here, friends who knew, a life that felt honest. But loving Gavin meant loving someone still trapped in the closet at work, and now that closet door had been ripped off its hinges. Gavin finally answered the call that evening, standing on the balcony of his Lake Shore Drive condo, the wind off the lake cutting through his shirt. They fired me, Cal. Officially. Image issue. Caleb's voice came back steady but thick with anger. Then we fight it. This isn't just about your job. It's about who we are. Gavin closed his eyes. Fight? With what? He had signed the NDA, kept everything professional on paper. But Caleb was already talking to a lawyer friend, someone who specialized in employment discrimination. Gavin felt the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something he had been too afraid to name. The next weeks blurred into a haze of empty days and sleepless nights. Gavin's inbox filled with sympathetic messages from colleagues who suddenly remembered they had always liked him, but none offered real support. His mother called from Indiana, voice laced with concern that felt more like disappointment. We saw the news online, honey. Is there something you need to tell us? He lied, said it was a misunderstanding. Caleb moved into the condo uninvited, bringing his sketchbooks and the quiet strength that had always grounded Gavin. They didn't talk about the future at first. They just existed together, cooking pasta, watching old movies, pretending the outside world hadn't exploded. But the silence between them grew heavier each day. Gavin could see the question in Caleb's eyes. Are you going to hide me forever, even now? One night, after too much wine, Gavin broke. I was scared, Cal. Scared of losing everything I worked for. Scared my family would never look at me the same. But losing you, that's the real fear. Caleb pulled him close, foreheads touching. Then stop hiding. File the lawsuit. Make them admit what they did. Gavin nodded against Caleb's shoulder, the decision settling like a stone in his stomach. He had no idea the fight would drag him through every buried insecurity. Every moment, he had chosen silence over truth. But for the first time, the rumor that had cost him his career felt like the only thing honest enough to rebuild his life on. The lawyer's office smelled of fresh coffee and expensive leather. Elena Vargas, a sharp-eyed Latina woman in her 40s, sat across the mahogany desk reviewing Gavin's file. This isn't just wrongful termination, Gavin. It's textbook discrimination under Title VII. Rumors about your sexual orientation created a hostile environment, and the company acted on them without investigation. We can prove it. Caleb sat beside him, fingers laced tightly under the table. For the first time in weeks, Gavin felt something besides dread, hope, fragile and terrifying. Elena laid out the plan. Discovery would force Apex to hand over emails, Slack messages, performance reviews. They would depose the colleague who started the rumor, the HR director, even the CEO if needed. You'll have to testify about your relationship, she warned. Be honest. Juries respond to authenticity. Gavin swallowed. Honest. That word had been his enemy for years. He glanced at Caleb, whose dark eyes held steady reassurance. We're in this together, Caleb said later that night as they walked along the lakefront path, the city lights reflecting on the water. No more half-lives. But honesty had consequences. Gavin's brother called the next morning, voice tight with barely contained rage. Dad saw an article. Some blogger linked your name to LGBT lawsuit. What the hell, Gavin? The church is asking questions. Mom's crying. Gavin stood on his balcony again, phone pressed to his ear, the wind whipping his hair. I'm gay, Mark. I've always been. And Caleb, he's the best thing that ever happened to me. The line went dead. The silence that followed carved a deeper wound than the firing ever had. Caleb's support never wavered. He took unpaid leave from Apex, risking his own job, to help Gavin prepare affidavits and sort through old emails that proved their relationship had never affected work performance. Late nights turned into strategy sessions where Caleb's design, I helped organize evidence into clean timelines. You built campaigns that made the company millions, Caleb reminded him. They can't erase that because of who you kiss. Gavin started to believe it. He began running again along the lake, the rhythmic pounding of his feet matching the resolve building inside. The man who once feared being seen was learning how to be visible. Friends from the old life split down the middle. Some disappeared. Others showed up with casseroles and awkward hugs, admitting they had suspected but never asked. One former colleague, a woman named Priya from accounting, confessed over coffee that she had overheard the rumor starter laughing about, finally taking down the golden boy. Betrayal tasted bitter, but it fueled Gavin. He started journaling, pages filled with the questions he had buried. Why did I think love had to be hidden to be real? Why did I let fear decide my worth? Caleb read the entries one quiet Sunday morning and simply said, You're growing, Gav. That's what this is. The first deposition loomed. Gavin practiced in front of the mirror, Caleb timing him, offering gentle corrections when his voice cracked. Remember why we're doing this, Caleb said. Not just for the job. For every kid who thinks they have to choose between success and being themselves. Gavin nodded, the weight shifting from burden to purpose. Outside the courthouse steps the day of the first hearing, reporters waited. Gavin paused, Caleb's hand brushing his briefly in solidarity. Cameras flashed. For the first time, he didn't flinch. The rumor had stripped him bare, but maybe being bare was the only way to stand tall. Discovery dragged on for months. Boxes of documents arrived at Elena's office, emails where managers joked about Gavin's lifestyle in private threads. Performance reviews that had once praised his leadership now carried coded notes about team cohesion concerns. Gavin read them with a mix of fury and nausea. Caleb stayed up nights scanning every page, highlighting inconsistencies. They knew about us for months and never said a word until a client complained, Caleb pointed out. That's not policy. That's panic. Gavin's family remained radio silent except for one terse text from his mother. We love you. We just need time. The words hurt more than outright rejection. He threw himself into the case, meeting with Elena twice a week, practicing testimony until the words felt like armor. Caleb watched him transform, the once polished executive now carrying a quiet fire. They argued sometimes, the stress cracking their usual harmony. "You're still protecting them," Caleb said one night after a particularly brutal mock cross-examination. "Your family, the company, even me in some twisted way. When do you choose you?" Gavin had no answer then, only the hollow ache of knowing Caleb was right. A breakthrough came when Priya agreed to testify. She had recorded a conversation in the break room where the rumor starter boasted about saving the company from a PR nightmare. Elena called it gold. Gavin felt the momentum shift. He started volunteering at a local LGBT youth center on weekends, sharing his story anonymously at first, then with his name. The kids looked at him like he was proof that survival was possible. Caleb joined him, teaching design workshops, their hands brushing over sketchpads in ways that felt safe now. Public. Real. Internal conflict peaked during a weekend trip to Caleb's old neighborhood in Pilsen. They walked past the mural Caleb had painted years ago, a vibrant celebration of queer joy. "This is who I've always been," Caleb said quietly. "You're still figuring out who you are without the suit and the title." Gavin sat on the curb, head in hands. "I'm scared that if I win the case, I'll still be the same scared guy who hit us." Caleb knelt in front of him. "Then let the win change you. Let me help." That night they talked until dawn, mapping dreams that included coming out fully to Gavin's family, maybe even a small wedding someday. The lawsuit had started as revenge. It was becoming rebirth. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat. Judge Harlan, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, presided with the patience of someone who had seen every excuse. Gavin took the stand first. His voice started shaky but steadied as he described the years of excellence, the sudden firing, the rumors that had never been investigated. "I never brought my personal life into the office," he said. "But they punished me for who I am anyway." Cross-examination tried to paint him as unprofessional. He answered every question with facts, eyes occasionally finding Caleb in the gallery, whose steady gaze anchored him. The colleague who started the rumor crumbled under Elena's questioning, admitting the story had been exaggerated for office drama. HR admitted no formal complaint had ever been filed by clients. They had acted on perception. Gavin watched the CEO squirm during his deposition video. The evidence piled up like bricks. Outside court, media picked up the story. Chicago executive sues over gay rumors. Gavin's phone filled with messages from strangers offering support. His brother sent a single text. "Proud of you for fighting. Small, but enough to crack the ice." Caleb testified next. He spoke of their love quietly, without drama, describing how they had kept it separate from work out of respect, not shame. "Gavin is the most ethical person I know," he said. Firing him didn't protect the company. It exposed its fear. The courtroom was silent. Gavin felt tears threaten, but held them back. This was the man he had hidden for 2 years, now speaking their truth in front of strangers and cameras. That night they walked home through downtown, hands finally linked openly. Chicago felt different, brighter. A setback came when Apex offered a large settlement to drop the case. Elena advised considering it. Gavin looked at Caleb across their kitchen table. "Money won't fix what they broke. I want the job back. I want the apology." Caleb smiled. "Then we keep fighting." The decision cost them sleep and arguments, but it solidified something unbreakable between them. Gavin started therapy, unpacking years of internalized shame. Sessions revealed how much he had tied his worth to success and silence. Caleb attended a few, learning how to support without rescuing. Their relationship deepened in the fire of the trial, no longer secret, no longer fragile. Closing arguments day arrived under gray Chicago skies. Elena stood tall. "This case isn't about one firing. It's about every LGBTQ employee who has ever been told their love makes them less valuable." She replayed key testimony, the emails, the admissions. Defense counsel argued company discretion. Judge Harlan listened, expression unreadable. Gavin sat rigid, Caleb's hand on his knee under the table, the only warmth in the room. The wait for the verdict stretched into weeks. Gavin threw himself into freelance consulting to stay sharp, Caleb back at Apex under tense stares. Family reconciliation began slowly. His mother flew in for a weekend, meeting Caleb over Sunday brunch. Tears and awkward hugs gave way to cautious acceptance. "We just want you happy," she said. Gavin believed her for the first time. His brother texted photos of his kids, no sermons attached. Small steps, but forward. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Elena's voice was triumphant. "We won. Full reinstatement, back pay, damages, and a court order for policy changes on discrimination training." Gavin dropped the phone, laughter and sobs mixing as Caleb pulled him into a crushing hug. They danced around the living room like teenagers, the city skyline witnessing their joy. But victory brought new questions. Would Gavin return to the same office that had betrayed him? Could he work beside people who had whispered? Caleb held him that night. "You don't have to decide today. You've already won the hardest part, yourself." The next morning they stood on the courthouse steps again, this time for the formal order. Cameras flashed. Gavin read a short statement. "Today the court affirmed that who I love doesn't diminish what I contribute. To every person still hiding, your truth is worth fighting for." Caleb stood beside him, no longer in shadows. Reporters asked about their future. Gavin looked at the man who had never left his side and answered honestly. "We're building it together, out in the open." The city felt alive with possibility. The rumor that had nearly destroyed him had instead set him free. Gavin walked back into the 32nd floor office on a crisp Monday morning, the reinstatement letter in his briefcase like a shield. Colleagues offered tentative smiles, some genuine, others cautious. The CEO had issued a company-wide memo about inclusion, mandated training starting next week. Gavin's old desk had been kept exactly as he left it, but the view from the window looked different now, wider. He spent the first day reviewing campaigns he had missed, the rhythm familiar yet transformed. Caleb texted from the design floor. "Lunch? Usual spot." Gavin smiled. No more hiding the answer. Over the following months, he implemented changes quietly. Ally training sessions he volunteered to lead, inclusive language in client briefs. Clients who had pulled away returned, some admitting the old rumors had been nonsense. His team flourished under the new openness. Gavin mentored younger employees, sharing pieces of his story when asked. The man who once feared exposure now saw vulnerability as strength. Caleb proposed on a quiet evening in their condo, rings simple and elegant, no grand gestures needed. "I don't want to wait anymore," he said. Gavin said yes before the question finished. They planned a small ceremony in Pilsen near the mural, inviting the family that had slowly come around and the friends who had stayed. Gavin's mother helped choose flowers. His brother officiated a short blessing, no scripture about sin, just love. The court order had forced Apex to change policies, but Gavin's real victory was internal. He no longer measured success by titles or secrecy. He measured it by the peace in his chest when he held Caleb's hand in public, by the kids at the youth center who now saw him as proof. Life wasn't perfect. Old fears surfaced sometimes, family conversations still careful. But he faced them now, Caleb beside him, the rumor long buried under truth. Years later, Gavin would look back and realize the firing had been the kindest cruelty. It stripped away the mask he had worn so long that he had forgotten the face beneath. The court gave him his job. Love, courage, and honesty gave him his life. In this story, standing up for your truth doesn't always feel heroic in the moment. It feels terrifying and lonely. But the lesson is simple. Hiding who you are costs more than any job or approval ever could. When you choose honesty over comfort, you don't just survive, you become someone stronger, someone free to love without apology. Gavin and Caleb remind us that real victory isn't the courtroom win, it's the quiet decision every day to live openly. If you're carrying a secret that's weighing you down, remember, the world may not be ready, but you are. Start there. The rest follows.